everybody. Welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and hot and stormy day, kind of weird outside. So we're here to talk some football for a couple of hours with you guys. Maggie Robinson will join later on in the show. And just off the top here, anybody watching, jump in the comments. Tell me if my audio's okay, because we were having a little bit of connection issue earlier when we were testing this. So just let me know that it's working all right, because if it's having a problem, then I will have to try to troubleshoot that. But otherwise, in for what should be a fun conversation, starting in not the most fun place, though, as the Minnesota Vikings wide receiver Jordan Addison now has a court date set for July 15th, addressing his DUI citation from last year. So I want to have a conversation about that. Okay, Troy says sounds good. Okay, all right, good. Maybe it's just it was just my headphones are going a little bit awry. I think we'll be all right then. Thanks. Appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. Good. So let's get into the Jordan Addison discussion, because I think that there's more than just a news update here for Jordan Addison. And I want to ask for you guys, clearly your comments are working. So throw your questions in, and when I'm done talking about Addison, we can have more conversation about him. But also, as you guys know, it's your show, especially in the middle of June. So whatever questions are on your mind, whatever you're thinking about with the Minnesota Vikings and NFL, jump in that comment section, let me know, and we'll have a good discussion. And then hour two, we'll have Maggie pop in and do her thing as usual for Monday night. So again, July 15th for Jordan Addison. It feels like forever since Jordan Addison had his issue with a DUI, being cited for that last year when he allegedly fell asleep behind the wheel in Los Angeles. And if you recall, I want to go back to that moment first, and then we'll talk about what it means right now and then going forward for Jordan Addison. So last year, it wasn't just that he got a DUI. These are things, I don't want to say they happen as if it doesn't matter. It does matter, and it's very serious when it comes to any player representing the Minnesota Vikings or coach in Wes Phillips's case getting charged with DUI. It is something that from time to time with NFL franchises, you will have happen, and it's, again, not acceptable in any way. But when it happened with Jordan Addison, it was different. It was a little bit more than just your typical DUI. It came right on the heels of Kyrie Jackson dying in a car accident that involved alcohol. And to have that happen just days after, it felt like it was as tone deaf as it comes from someone like Jordan Addison, to have a teammate pass away in a car wreck that involved alcohol and then get behind the wheel. Again, allegedly, this is what he's going to court for, but being cited for DUI at this point. And the other part of it was not just that it felt as lost and just clueless and senseless as you could possibly get from Addison after that had happened right before it, just a few days before it, but also coming from his rookie year where he was pulled over for going 140 miles an hour behind the wheel. And then you get after, okay, one is a really bad mistake, two is a pattern of behavior. And to have him be pulled over for DUI a year after doing something so serious, such as driving 140 miles an hour, and I believe it was a 55 mile an hour road, which could have resulted in anything, him killing himself, him killing someone else, and then not learning his lesson after that, getting behind the wheel again, allegedly, and getting cited for DUI. That put us in a pretty bad place last summer with Jordan Addison. I also felt last year that the team's message about Jordan Addison and what they said about the situation and what they did about the situation was not enough. And I'm sure that behind the scenes, there was some fines for Addison, and there was a very tough conversation that he had with a lot of people after he was cited for DUI. But the first day of training camp, it was right back to wide receiver 2, right out there next to Justin Jefferson. No reps were missed or anything else like that. And that felt to me like it wasn't a strong enough message to Jordan Addison about what can happen to his NFL career should he continue to get behind the wheel and do things like he allegedly did to get this DUI citation. And I remember sitting on the porch, and hopefully this weather starts to turn around so we can get some porch podcasts going. Everybody's ready to go and to do, to get into the porch pods, but it's been kind of nasty out there. So, but last year I remember sitting on the porch having a conversation with Dane Mizutani about Jordan Addison and saying, look, if the Minnesota Vikings decide that they just don't want to deal with this anymore and they trade him away, I won't care, because of the way that it happened, when it happened, and the background from the previous driving incident. In the year since, now this is all that we know. We know that Jordan Addison in the year since has had a really good football season last year, in which, I have his stats here, he caught 63 passes, 875 yards, 9 touchdowns. It was a really good season, despite being banged up at the beginning of the year and struggling a little bit to get on the same page with Sam Darnold. And then once he did, he took off, had that huge game against the Chicago Bears. And by the end of the season, all of us were saying that they have their clear-cut number 2 wide receiver next to Justin Jefferson, which makes up one of the most dangerous receiving duos in the entire NFL. That's where we're at. There have been no other instances, issues, problems, no other time cited for anything behind the wheel of a vehicle. It doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but it certainly means that there has not been any documented issues with Jordan Addison behind the wheel in the year since. There is another thing that I think is worth context too, which is this during minicamp, last press conference that we had with Justin Jefferson. He talked about asking if Jordan Addison would work out with him, that he wants to have Jordan come to his house or stay in Minnesota or wherever he is working out. I don't know where Justin's working out, maybe back in New Orleans, but to have them get together and work out during this time between the middle of June and the beginning of training camp, because this is the most dangerous time for a lot of athletes. When we get to the spring, they're up in Minnesota, they're doing OTAs, they're doing team workouts, they're doing minicamp. Once the end of the summer comes and July 17th, 20th, whatever training camp starts, then they know where they're going to be every single day, and they go through that. Then the entire season, every single day, you know where you're going to be. But in the middle of June and into July, before the season starts, that's when players are free to do whatever the heck they want to do with no responsibility. And most of the players, 99.9%, come back without any citations. Jordan Addison has come back twice with 2 citations. So you can't go 3 for 3. That's number one. But as this court case comes around and he's actually going to go to trial with it, which is interesting enough that it wasn't just plead down. And maybe this was a way to drag it out to make sure that last season he wasn't missing any time in the middle of a 14-win season. But to have this where he has to go and be a part of a trial, I hope for him that if it wasn't already a wake-up call last year, that standing in court to address what he had done off the field is as much of a wake-up call as anything else could be. And I also was thinking about if he spends more and more time around Justin Jefferson, who seems to have put it on his own shoulders he talked about get Addison to come out of his shell a little bit more, be a little bit more talkative, be a little bit more as a leadership type of role and start to grow up. And we do have to remember, I've got his exact age here, that Jordan Addison is just over the age of 23. Now, I think that once you get past that first couple of years into the NFL, that any excuses about being young go out the window. Now, maybe 21, maybe 22, but after that, not that any of it was excusable, but after that, you can't say, it was young and he made a mistake. No, then it gets to a point where you're a grown up, you've been in the league for long enough, and you know how to behave yourself and you know how to deal with things off the field to the point where this should never be a problem again. So when we add up the last year, the way he performed does matter as part of this conversation. And no problems off the field. Jefferson starting to, I think, get to Jordan Addison as a role model and try to bring him in to work out with him. And then this final step, which is the court date of this is grown-up time. You can't just go and screw off behind the wheel just because you're an NFL player and think that that's what you're allowed to do because you're you. And he should then take that even more seriously, standing in front of a judge with a jury and everything else. If that's how it's going to go, if they end up ultimately getting there in July 15th, sometimes these things are resolved afterward. And if it wasn't enough for him to also see the aftermath of what happened with Kyrie Jackson, his family, what it meant to his teammates, all those things, what it meant to his head coach going and the funeral, and all of that can be the implications of driving while intoxicated. If none of this has gotten through, then that will show itself at some point with Jordan Addison. But so far, it appears like it has gotten through to Jordan Addison. Now, we've heard from him. We've talked to him. He isn't the most vocal guy. He isn't the most expressive guy. So I can't tell you whether I believe him or not based on his comments and so forth. But it does seem that Addison has taken this event seriously. Now, this puts us at what I think is a pivot point for Jordan Addison in his career and maybe in his life, which is, first of all, can you get to training camp with no other incidents? But also learning from what happened here and taking it up a level in multiple different ways, taking it up a level on the field and taking it up a level off the field in the locker room to become a key member of this team and a leader on this team, because that's something that he has not been in these first couple of years. He has not been reliable off the field. He has not been someone that everybody is looking to as a leader. He's been a number 2 wide receiver who has shown flashes of really, really excellent play, but I would still only call them flashes. I have not thought of Jordan Addison as a week-to-week dominating type, can't stop Jordan Addison level of player. I think that he has been very good, but I don't think that he has become somebody who everybody is looking to set the standard in the same way as Justin Jefferson, but he can become these things. And that's why I say that it is a pivot point for Jordan Addison. As he goes from here and as he goes through this trial and gets back to training camp and gets back on the field and does not presumably get any more citations or be pulled over for anything else behind the wheel or whatever other 100 things that could happen with an NFL player off the field between the middle of June and the end of July, that none of those things happen, then we could be talking about Jordan Addison becoming the player that they really want him to become, which is the Chris Carter to Randy Moss. Right now, he's not that. He's very good, but he's not that. And another part of it is what you are off the field, in the locker room, all of those things. Are you a franchise player that is making everything better all the time, or are you just a guy that works here and that could get in trouble at any time and can't be relied upon and isn't going to be a leader or anything else like that? We're going to find out about Jordan Addison. I'm not going to try to predict what's going to happen. I'm just saying that this is a point in his life and his career where it can go one way or the other. This is the fork in the road for Jordan Addison. And the reason is why it's a major fork is because it's not too far around the corner that there's going to be discussions about a 5th-year option for the Minnesota Vikings to either use or not, and then a long-term contract, which they could sign or not sign Jordan Addison to. So if he continues to do the things that he's done over the last year, and he does follow the lead of Justin Jefferson, then he can be that guy. He can be somebody who gets their 5th-year option picked up. He can be someone who is driving the success of J.J. McCarthy. he can be a receiver that is very, very hard to stop because he has the skill and the talent to do so. And he can be a guy who is off the field reliable, who is a leader to his teammates in the locker room, who leads by example, leads by the way that he carries himself, or he can go the opposite way. And that's going to be his choice. And I'm thinking of it as this court date represents that fork in the road for Jordan Addison. And we are going to see where it goes from there. Now, there's the other part of this, which is, will he be suspended? And I don't know whether the NFL will decide on its decision to suspend him or not, just sheerly based on whether he's found guilty or not. I don't know, because there is written into the policy that just making the league look bad by having a court date and by being cited for DUI is enough to be suspended. There is nothing in the NFL's policy that says you absolutely must be found guilty in order for us to suspend you. So that could still happen. I don't know which way it's going to go because I've never really understood Roger Goodell's wheel of justice anyway. Sometimes it's hard to figure out what is suspendable and what isn't. And I was baffled when Delvin Cook was accused of certain things that included photos and text messages, and yet did not get suspended at any point. And then that was ended up settled off the field, but certainly made the Shield look pretty bad. And yet there was no penalty whatsoever because there was a story spun to certain reporters that turned out to be not so true. But that was the first impression everybody had. I've never been able to pin down exactly what the rules are. They seem quite arbitrary, but if he is found guilty of DUI, then we do have a pretty good sense from recent history what that could mean as far as a suspension goes. The last time that a player got a DUI and was found guilty of that DUI, a New Orleans Saints wide receiver, he was suspended for 3 games. If this happens with Jordan Addison on July 15th, assuming this date is not moved back or changed, then a 3-game suspension feels very, very likely for Jordan Addison. And if that happens, that means that Jalen Naylor has to step up, that they need Ty Felton, they need Rondale Moore, they need TJ Hawkinson to fill a fairly decent sized chunk of the NFL season. I mean, 3 games out of 17 is, that's significant. And when that happens, I would assume if they're acting swiftly as the NFL, that might end up being the first 3 games of the year. So the first 3 games potentially. Now, I don't know. Again, I'm not saying any of this definitively or reporting as if I know it, because I don't. I don't know how Rodgers going to handle it. But if July 15th it comes down, or a few days after that he is found guilty of this, the NFL could suspend him very quickly, as they did with the wide receiver from New Orleans as soon as that trial was over. So could it be the first 3 games of the season? That's a division game. That's a game against Atlanta, a conference game. That's a game against Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. Or could things end up getting moved back and we don't know where it goes from there? So if he is found not guilty, they still could suspend him. But if they choose not to, then this whole thing will sort of be like it didn't happen. I don't in a way, I don't love that because you want there to be consequences for actions. You want there to be a message that is sent and received by Jordan Addison that this is not okay. You can't just have your lawyers get you out of stuff, especially if you're someone like Henry Ruggs, for example, who drove drunk at 140 miles an hour or so and killed someone. What is he just getting out of prison right now, and his career was ruined? So there is a lot to be decided here still after this court case, how much he'll be suspended, what could happen, and then just himself making sure that he stays on the straight and narrow. Because if he does, then you're looking at the Minnesota Vikings having a duo of wide receivers that they can count on for a long time with JJ McCarthy. And that's the best case scenario for everybody. That means that Addison has figured it out. That means he's gotten on the right path. And that means that the Vikings have somebody who can make opposing teams pay when Justin Jefferson is being doubled and tripled and so forth. And we've seen that happen throughout Jordan Addison's young career, I also think that he still has a ways to go as a wide receiver before he is going to get that complete level of respect. And that might take a next level dedication from Jordan Addison in general, of like talking about working out with Justin Jefferson and following his every move. I don't doubt that Jordan Addison is a football junkie and loves film and loves ball and everything, but 63 catches is okay, but it certainly isn't, oh my gosh, there's no way we could ever double Justin Jefferson because the other guy's going to destroy us. He has a couple times a year. And again, I think he's very, very, very good, but there is another level to that as well, which there may be some correlation between off the field and taking the next step for Jordan Addison. So there's my thought on his upcoming court case, is that this is a very important moment for him in his career with the Minnesota Vikings and in probably his life in general, to decide which way he's going to go. So thoughts, comments, questions. I see, there's maybe some comments that I'm not super comfortable with at the moment. So we could talk about anything that you guys want to talk about. I mean, when you call Jordan Addison a cancer, I don't think that that's right. I think that that's lazy. And that's just anybody with a problem. That's what you're saying. When I think of it that way, I mean, I've never liked that terminology anyway. I mean, everyone knows someone who has died of cancer. It just seems like really inappropriate. But for some reason, they still use that terminology in sports. I think of when I hear that, I think of this person causes problems with the rest of the locker room and is a constant distraction. I have not felt that way about Jordan Addison. I have felt like he is appreciated by his teammates, that he's sort of been recluse. Like he's been very quiet and to himself, and has not really been somebody who is interconnected in the same way as a lot of his teammates. And when he's gotten his chance to make big plays, he often has, but has not become the consistent type of receiver that you associate with being a superstar. But I don't think that he's a locker room problem. What he is every single night, if you're Kevin O'Connell, you go to bed hoping that your phone doesn't ring at 3:00 in the morning telling you about something that's happened off the field with Jordan Addison. I think he's somebody who scares you. I don't think that he's a player that hurts the locker room or hurts the team's chances to win on a weekly basis because he's some sort of distraction. It's more of just, can you rely on him to actually be there, or is he going to be suspended, or is he going to be in the headlines for something that is going on with the way that he's handled himself off the field? And that's my point, is you want him to be a major part of the future of this franchise. You would like to be in a spot, as you're the Vikings, of making the same type of deal that T. Higgins just got to go along with Jamar Chase. That's what you want Jordan Addison to be. But I do also think that it's one of the reasons that, the Vikings have to draft somebody like Ty Felton. They have to start making plans just in case there's some sort of, issue in the future that precludes them from being able to sign him to a contract extension. I don't understand what you mean, Alex, talking about how O'Connell wanted him in the first place. Do you think he keeps him up at night? Of course he does. Of course he does. I mean, I'm absolutely certain that Kevin O'Connell is terrified of waking up to that phone call again from some issue with Jordan Addison. I mean, what he's gone through in the first couple of years as the head coach, the guy he drafts goes 140 miles an hour, and then there doesn't seem to really be any sort of punishment. And even at one point, O'Connell made a crack about it in a press conference, which I didn't really think was too good. And then the following year, after getting the DUI, I didn't think that there was a strong enough statement made to Jordan Addison either. But if it's third time is not a charm, if it were to happen again. So I do think that he should be very, very concerned. And it does reflect on him, because that's been his guy. That's been who he's gone to bat for and who he's always been very supportive of. And just personally think that he hasn't been hard enough on after these incidents. So he's made his bets with Jordan Addison, and it's going to result potentially if he's found guilty, and a 3-game suspension. And then that's something that O'Connell has to work around. And if there were another incident after that, that could mean another suspension. Like, who knows, right? So, yeah, I do think that if I was the head coach of the team and that was such an important player, that I would be kept up at night. I think we need to characterize this thing the right way, which is not that he is a problem inside the locker room. It's that he has made some very serious mistakes behind the wheel that he is lucky did not cause any other issues for anyone else, that he did not crash into anyone going 140 miles an hour as Henry Ruggs did, that he did not, when he was allegedly being cited for DUI, cause any other problems for other drivers like what happened with Kyrie Jackson. Like, these are very serious things that have happened. And I think you can't roll your eyes at those or say like, oh, it's no big deal. He drafted him. He loves him. Like, well, he's going to love him a heck of a lot less if it happens again. So let it be a lesson to Jordan Addison, and we'll see how the rest plays out. So let me get to other questions here. Son of a Beavers, moving the conversation along. Do we think that RB3 is on the roster, or do you think the Vikings might check and see who is free on cutdown day? Yeah, at this moment, I am not convinced that that is the case. But here's where Ty Chandler does come in to the mix. Is I think Ty Chandler is a pretty darn good kick returner. He's not quite as good as Kene Nwangwu, but I think he's a very good kick returner. And do you really want Isaiah Rodgers back there as CB2? I think that Rodgers looks like, and this is only a tiny sample size of seeing him just move around at minicamp, but also looking at his numbers and some kick returns before in the past. I think Isaiah Rodgers could be an exceptional kick returner, but I would not want anything to do with a top cornerback back there returning kicks and getting smashed into time and time again. I would not want any part of that. So I would prefer that they have Ty Chandler do it, do that kick returning role, and put somebody else back there who can take the punishment of that as well. And then if you end up in a spot where somebody gets hurt, Ty Chandler can be your backup. But both of the starting running backs for the Vikings, Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones, they can play a full role if they need to, with only a little bit of Ty Chandler mixing in. As for right now, I would still have him as RB3. I don't know if Trey Stewart is going to give him a run for his money. It would take one heck of a preseason and training camp for Trey Stewart to do that. And maybe since Cam Akers hasn't signed anywhere yet, he could still end up back with the Minnesota Vikings. But as of right now, I think that Chandler would be the guy, and they would wait and see how they felt about him at the end of training camp and preseason. Wade says Jordan Addison is most likely an introvert being mischaracterized as arrogant or aloof. No, I don't. I mean, I think he's an introvert, but I don't think he's being mischaracterized here. I don't think anybody is saying, other than the one bad comment, but I don't think anybody is saying anything about Jordan Addison's personality other than what you're looking for from him is to come out of his shell and to be somebody that can be, and I don't need him to rah everybody. What you need is him, and because Harrison Smith has always been a more to himself type of player, you need him to be somebody that sets the standard as a guy who is very quickly, like, these careers don't last long. By the time you're in year 3, you're a veteran, man. Like, you know how the NFL works, and you're the one that is driving your offense, driving your success, and being the guy out there and leading by example off the field, which goes into all of this. So I don't think that it's about him necessarily being introverted, and I don't know who's characterizing him as being arrogant or aloof. I think what he should be characterized as somebody who's made some very, very bad mistakes behind the wheel so far in his career. And if he continues on that path, it is going to be problematic for the Vikings. It's going to be problematic for him. And I don't know how much farther you can go with him if that happens again. If this isn't this entire endeavor for him of getting cited all the way through with the court situation, and then finally the case that that's supposed to happen, or the court date that's supposed to happen here, that it needs to be a message to him. So I don't think that people are talking about his personality being harmful or something inside the locker room so much as these decisions off the field cannot continue in this way. We've seen many, many players start off good, look like they're going to have great careers, and then not go that way because of things that happen off of the field. Cam Akers is currently RB3 on the Saints roster. Did he sign with them? I didn't see that. Trade for him around Halloween. That's that's good. That's good. I like that. Yeah, I mean, find somebody that you love more than KOC loves Cam Akers. That's for sure. So Jude says, what's your opinion on UDFA Zamiah Vaughn? I think that all of us were impressed by Zamiah Vaughn at minicamp. There's a few things about him that stand out. Number one is his height and his length. He is very tall. I would not have to tell you which guy is Zamiah Vaughn if you just saw his height and weight. Kind of looks like, if you remember Cam Dantzler, like he's not the thickest guy. He's probably a little thicker than Cam Dantzler, but remember that very tall, lanky type of guy. That's how Zamiah Vaughn is. And it also stood out to me that he just made plays on the football. That's something that I always look for in these practice environments is, do you make plays on the football? Because if you're not making plays in practice, this is why everybody likes Theo Jackson and Dwight McGlothern so much, because that's what they've done. If you're not making plays in practice, then you're probably not going to make plays in the actual games. And so far, it's only 7-on-7s, but every single day that we saw Zamiah Vaughn, he was making plays on the football, including a kind of highlight reel, finger quote, interception where his feet may have been out of bounds. I wasn't at a good angle to really see, but kind of went up and the sort of defensive mossed a guy and made an interception. Had a lot of pass breakups in college. Didn't have a ton of picks, but had a lot of pass breakups. Played for a very good program. So he's got my attention. And sometimes the things that work for Brian Flores do not work for every team. So I don't get the sense that Zamiah Vaughn is super fast. I could not find a 40 for him. I could only find a vertical, that it was a near 40-inch vertical, but I could not find a pro day 40 or a combine 40. I get the feeling that it's not great. That's the reason that he didn't run any 40s, but that doesn't matter as much in a system with Brian Flores, where it's really about explosiveness. It's really about quickness, and it's about your ability to read and react of what's happening in front of you. Can you see the field? And then can you make plays on the football? And that's what zone defenses are really about, which is being able to see what's happening and developing in front of you, understanding space, where you're supposed to be, and then go make a play. And we just the ever so slight amount we have seen has been really good, but it's only been a slight amount. When the pads come on, things get different. But you know, the fact that he's got some length and some height to him does make it more interesting. Let's see. CJ says, if Addison misses 3 games, they can survive those 3, pump up his stats, and next year pick up his 5th-year option and trade after year 4. All right, we're now, CJ, we're too far down the line when it comes to, you know, making a trade. That's something I've never been interested in, unless they had decided last year that it was so concerning with the off the field stuff that they just needed to move on. If they had traded him right after the incident for pennies on the dollar, then I would have said, okay. Or even really, if they had traded him this offseason, then we all would have known what it was about and why they were trading him, because he had a really good season. They didn't do that either. They have decided to stick it out and ride it through with him, which makes me think that they believe that he can stay on the straight and narrow, and that's what he needs to do to get that 5th-year option. But look, when you have wide receivers, you need to keep them, and they're important, because go look at the free agent wide receiver list from last year. It's guys who are unhappy or old or injured, or you have to trade everything for a DK Metcalf and give him $32 million a year. Like, these wide receivers are worth their weight in gold. And Jordan Addison's success here is worth its weight in gold to the Vikings. Having a number 2 wide receiver who can make defenses pay for covering Justin Jefferson too much, that is so important. And I don't think that anybody can do it because a lot of the plays where he makes them pay are one-on-one coverage. Can you beat your one-on-one coverage? Can you go up over a guy and make a play? Like, he can do all these things. He can contort his body, track the football. When you see this guy practice, I mean, he is really exceptional, stands way out from the other wide receivers with his route running ability and ability to go get the football. It's not someone that I would want to trade away. And when you're talking about fifth year options, by the time he gets to his fifth year option, what is he going to be, 25 years old? I mean, then you could sign him to a 5-year contract and you get the entire second part of his prime. Like, this is really important to the Vikings organization that he gets it figured out. And that contract, I know everybody gets, worried about contracts and so forth. It won't be making a big impact until several years down the road and they can figure it out from there. But he's a vital part of the organization to be able to have this wide receiver duo. And I've always thought that the duo is so important when you have that superstar number one wide receiver, that somebody else is there and they can't just put all their attention on that one guy. Julio says, shout out from Los Angeles, my wife's hometown, Julio. So hope you guys are doing well there. Strongly believe that Jalen Nailor will have a strong campaign this season. I'm a firm believer. He has a new body and he's ready to show it off. It really is. When we asked Justin Jefferson about it, he laughed because it is so different what we've seen from Jalen Nailor, that he clearly went into the offseason and decided that he needed to take another step to be ready to take the punishment of a season. Last year, he took a step being physically ready. And I think this year, really another clear dedication from Jalen Nailor. When he came into the league, I'm not really convinced he fully understood. And this is something guys have to learn, how much work has to go into it to hang with the pros, because every day that you're not beefing yourself up, somebody else is in the NFL, and the hits are harder and the strain on your body is 1,000 times more than it is playing 10 games at Michigan State or something. I mean, it's not even close. What goes into being great in the NFL. And I think that Nailor has progressively figured this out more and more, that if you can put on weight, but maintain your quickness and maintain your long speed with more strength, and then add maybe a blocking element where he can actually be used in those situations, because there were blocks last year, or attempts at blocks from Nailor, that were pretty sad. So it shows a commitment for him. If he has a great year, he's going to put the Vikings in a tough spot, because they have a lot of the dollars spent for 2026. There's not going to be a whole lot of room for error. There are contracts that are restructurable, but there's not going to be a whole lot of room for error to bring back somebody at a pretty big contract, which they may have to do if Nailor, just is somebody they can't let out the door. But how would they do it? And how much money would it cost? Because if he has a great year, so I mentioned on the show the other day, hey, I could see Jalen Nailor catching 45 passes for 600 yards or something, that if he becomes a favorite of JJ McCarthy as a second option, that can happen. It happened with KJ Osborne and Kirk Cousins in 2021 and to some extent in 2022. And if you're playing in shootouts, then that means more passing and so forth than there was last year, where the first part of the season, the Vikings are just playing in blowouts and they're not throwing that many passes. I could see Nailor having a really good season and putting them in a bind, but they might have to move on. And that's part of the reason you draft Ty Felton. That was my big argument for drafting Ty Felton, was you might have to move on, but Nailor could be a very important part of the operation, especially if we're talking about 3 games, just to tie it back in, 3 games of Jordan Addison. If he's out for 3 games, then Jalen Nailor is a big deal for this football team. Matt says, definitely a turning point for Addison. Still like him as a player, but he seems a nice enough guy, and another incident, I'll be fine moving on. Well, I think that's a very fair way to view it, is that he has been a good player for them for the last couple of years. I always have a tough time judging how somebody is as a person, even from me getting to know these guys a little bit, because a lot of it's on a handful of conversations over the years, and I don't know them off the field. And I'll never forget Judd Zulgad's story about loving to cover Darren Sharper and then finding out later what was happening with Darren Sharper, that he was such a nice guy inside the locker room. And then, so you never really know. There are certain guys you would bet on a lot more than others, but you never really know. I think with Addison, though, he is liked by his teammates and everybody sees the talent. But I do think there's another level there to him, whether it's just the way that he's carrying himself on a day-to-day basis and being more of somebody that carries the weight of the franchise, but also you have to represent yourself a certain way to get that respect from your teammates as well. And I agree, if there's another incident, then you just can't really go forward with that player if there's another incident. Whether that means an immediate trade, I don't know. But as far as a fifth-year option, you absolutely cannot give a fifth-year option to a player with 3 years and 3 issues. You can't do that. Mike says, does July court date likely mean he will miss the first 3 games of the regular season, or when do we expect him to be out? That's a hard thing to figure out with old Raj in charge and the spinning wheel of justice. But I would guess that if this went very quickly, and I was once a juror for OG listeners to the show, they probably remember the time that I was a juror on a case that was actually involving sex trafficking. It was quite an experience to see what it was really like to be on a jury and all that. But even a complicated trial like that was maybe 4 days. And then there was a result and we had it. So I don't expect this to go on super long after the court date, assuming that it happens the day it's supposed to happen and it doesn't get moved back or changed or anything else. There's not a lot of wiggle room there before training camp being July 15th. And that's certainly enough time for Roger Goodell to decide that he's going to be suspended, if that's going to happen, and how long. It gives them plenty of runway to make a decision and then have it be at the beginning of the season. That's what I would expect. I would expect that to be at the beginning of the season, but I don't know for sure. You just never can really predict these things. I'm just going on the most recent incident of a DUI. I forget the guy's name, in New Orleans, who had a 3-game suspension right after the ruling was laid down by the courts. I would assume that it's going to go the same way. Steve says, if we sign Jair Alexander, perhaps Isaiah Rodgers could be in the kick return mix. Now that I agree with, that's if Jair Alexander is actually playing, because if you sign Jair Alexander, how many games do you really expect him to play? But I think if they were to go out and make a move for a Jalen Ramsey, a Jair Alexander, then it really changes the math on that. And suddenly they would go from a secondary that you felt like is a little bit teetering. Like, hey, this thing could go one way or the other. It could go really well and it could blow up and be great if guys take another step like Blackman and like Isaiah Rodgers, or it could come apart if those guys don't work out as starters. Now, if you had Jair Alexander or Jalen Ramsey in the mix, and those are your backups, then you feel awesome about where your secondary is in general. So yes, if they were to sign Jair Alexander, then I would expect Isaiah Rodgers to be a part of a rotation, but I would expect him to be their kick and punt returner because he is different when it comes to that stuff. He has ball skills. He has crazy, crazy speed, fluidity. He can get low. I think he sees the field. I went back and watched a few of these things and just seeing him out there, it's not like they're doing a full speed kick return, but just seeing the burst that he has catching the football and taking off. It's something to see. He's the best option, but if he's corner 2, you do not want that. World Debt Now says, I want Silas back there, even though I haven't heard of him until Wednesday. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, Mr. Debt Now, yes, we're all kind of like that with undrafted free agents. It's always been my thing I look at them when they're signed and I take figure out who they are, where they came from and their stats. And then I pretty much forget about them until they make me remember, which is going out on the practice field. Make me remember you. And Zemiah Vaughn is one who's done that. Make me learn your name. Make me care about you. And Silas Bolden is exactly that kind of guy from what we saw just in a very small sample size in his punt returning in minicamp. And the fact that he was so good at it during his college career with Texas this last year. He was very good at the punt returning with them, averaged almost 11 yards per return, had the touchdown, had another touchdown with Oregon State before that. Like, you're on my radar. So, I think that I think he's got a legitimate chance to win that. Is this the same situation as Rashee Rice? That I don't know. I'm sorry. I have not really looked into Rashee Rice and what his situation is. I know that there was an accident, right? Was there a DUI involved? Was there speed? I don't really know. And I haven't heard what his suspension is going to be. If you guys know, you can let me know. I was going off the precedent of the Saints receiver rather than Rashee Rice, because I haven't heard a resolution to that, if he's going to get suspended or not. Steve says the Vikings sniffed around Khalil Herbert last year too. He's in Indy currently, but if Indy's season doesn't go well, they could trade for him too. Right. We know, we definitely know that what's going to happen when it comes to the Vikings is they'll look at every option in the middle of the season. They will look at potential trades if you lose a player to injury, if you're not happy with a current situation at this position or that position. They will make their additions. Like every year that Kevin O'Connell has been here, they've made in-season trades, whether it was Josh Dobbs or Cam Robinson or Cam Akers, and could be Khalil Herbert. Like, they're going to find options to make a move if they want to make a move. And that's why, yeah, for now, Ty Chandler, but you can make that decision later. Like, it doesn't have to be make that decision right now on Ty Chandler. They could see how it looks. They could see if he's the kick returner and they have to keep him. They could see if they like Trey Stewart and so forth before they do that. And then if there's an injury to Jordan Mason or Aaron Jones, they could go out and make a trade. And running back has got to be one of the easier positions to trade for, because the guy, I mean, yes, you have to learn the offense. You got to learn the pass protection. But for the most part, the run plays, like, show up, get the football, run the football. I mean, it's not the most complicated thing if you need to plug and play somebody. If you're Aaron Jones, it's complicated because you're running lots of routes and blocking and all that sort of stuff. But if you're a plug and play guy, Cam Akers had no problem jumping into the mix last year. That's something that they can definitely do. Alex, the Packers fan, I know, Alex, says, do you think that Tucker Kraft is about to become the best tight end in the division? Let's see. Well, you have Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet in Chicago. You have Sam Laporta in Detroit and TJ Hawkinson here. No, I don't think so. I mean, Sam Laporta is probably the best of that entire group. We'll see with TJ Hawkinson. TJ Hawkinson 2 years ago was, a Pro Bowl tight end, clearly one of the best in the league. And then the injury, and last year he's coming back from that for the whole second half of the season. And sometimes people act like TJ Hawkinson did nothing last year at all. Like, he barely even showed up after he returned, but that's not really true. He ended up last year with 41 catches and 455 yards, 74 PFF grade, which was only a little bit different from 2023. It just was not as many snaps. And Sam Darnold did have a couple interceptions while targeting him. Maybe that kind of shaded how we felt about it. Didn't have touchdowns, so that's going to be a problem as well. But actually, interestingly, Hawkinson had, I hadn't seen this stat before, but he had 10 contested catches on 16 attempts last year. So he actually did make some contested catches, which was kind of a problem, I thought, in 2023. Hawkinson is still really good. I mean, his last two full seasons, 86 and 95 catches, 11 yards a catch last year. How many drops did he have last season? Two drops last season. It was a little bit of a problem the year before. He plays in the slot. He can move around. I mean, he's still a very, very good player who I think is going to be a major part of this offense with JJ McCarthy. But Laporta is the guy. You got to give it to Laporta. And then Kraft fits in somewhere. I feel like Jordan Love either likes to look really deep or really short. Maybe he doesn't fit into that. Let's see. Hamza says, do you think playing in such a run-heavy offense in Michigan really hurt JJ and his ability to fully showcase his throwing talents and playmaking ability? Do you think he is a higher pick if he had, second part of the message, if he had played on a team that threw the ball like Ohio State with great wide receivers? I don't know. I don't know, because you have to also consider that he averaged 9 yards per attempt and completed 72% of his passes in college. So when he was throwing the ball, he was having very, very high efficiency. If he was throwing more, would he have had the same type of efficiency, or would he have had more interceptions too and a lower completion percentage and whatever? I don't think that the NFL, and I mean, I did ask Kwesi Adofo-Mensah about this when he appeared on the podcast last year, about dealing with the small sample size and the running offense and so forth. And one of the things that he talked about was really trying to cut it down to what are the real NFL throws. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean down in distance, but it means what types of plays, and it could mean like 3rd and 7 or something like that. He had good third down statistics. We know that. He had really good stats when coming off of play action. But what Kevin O'Connell understands is what type of throws exist in a Minnesota Vikings offense. What type of throws are college throws? And if you look at certain quarterbacks coming out, I mean, you might see 3 to 5 real NFL type throws in an entire college football game, because it's screens, it's bubbles, that's the same thing. It's like guys who are wide open down the football field from coverage busts. And so how much is it tight window? How much is it multiple read or full field type of reads? How much is it like understanding where guys are going to be and throwing with anticipation? I thought that Michael Penix had a lot of those throws when he was coming out, but Bo Nix had less. Bo Nix had that really, really high screen rate that they threw at Oregon. And that brought some questions with it itself. Like, can he really make all the NFL throws, and how often is he asked to do that? So McCarthy, a high percentage of his throws were NFL throws when he was in college, because he has an NFL coach and an NFL style offense that was dominated with rushing. But I think that how much did that hurt his like draft stock? I'm not sure, because I don't know that teams really draft guys based on their statistics. I think that they might weigh it a little bit, but it's usually trying to project what is he going to look like as our quarterback, what's his skill set, what's his character, all those things together, and you land on him as a top 10 draft pick. And you're trying to project what he's going to be into the future and not focusing entirely on what he was in the past at Michigan. So how much can he grow? How much can he improve? And I remember Kevin O'Connell saying that they had seen pretty significant growth from him as a passer, even between the time that his season ended and the combine and his pro day, that he had grown as a passer. So maybe a little bit. I mean, if he had gone to Ohio State and if he had thrown for 4,000 yards and 35 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, then yeah, maybe the New York Giants would have drafted him. The New York Giants should have drafted him, by the way. I like Malik Neighbors a ton, but I mean, they are just lost in the woods at quarterback. I still think that even with Jackson Dart, but we'll see. The point just being like, I'm not sure, because so much of it is based on character and makeup and how the guy processes information and meetings and things like that. There's guys who put up huge stats that don't even get drafted high because the skill sets aren't there. So you're judging the skill set and how the guy responds. And this is why Shadur Sanders goes in the 5th round, because if those meetings don't go well, you don't get drafted. And for McCarthy, I get the sense that the meetings went really well for him with the Vikings and other teams. And look, 10th overall is a pretty high draft pick. Let's see. Freaker by the Speaker says, is there a punter battle? I don't believe so. I think that it'll be Ryan Wright, and Oscar Chapman will stay on the international roster exception. And then what you'll see is if Ryan Wright struggles in training camp, that they'll bring in another veteran and they'll keep developing Oscar Chapman. I don't think that they're in this situation going to just switch to a guy who's a rookie and has never played before. And I really don't think they're going to take away Will Reichard's guy that's holding the ball. I think they want to keep that up with Ryan Wright. He's been really good holding the football. And as silly as that might sound, like, hey, can't anybody do that? They're not all the same. And some kickers are really particular. There was a story about, was it David Akers? Somebody needed a backup quarterback to be signed by his team just because he liked the way he held the football for the field goals. It's a big deal for these kickers. And Ryan Wright has been really excellent with whoever is kicking, whether it's Greg Joseph or whether it was Will Reichard. And he's a lot more experienced. I don't think there's going to be a change at the punter situation. I don't, unfortunately, think there's going to be a punt off and then winner gets to keep the job unless Chapman just blows everybody away. It's really Ryan Wright versus himself. If he punts really well in training camp, he'll be the guy. If he struggles, then we might end up seeing another veteran who gets cut be brought in, but I don't think it's going to be Chapman. Alex says, would there be some concern that Darrisaw and Addison miss time simultaneously and the offense struggles as a result? Well, they have enough that they can survive stuff like that. I mean, they have TJ Hawkinson, 2 good running backs, the best wide receiver in the world. It would be harder, though. It would be harder to go 3-0 if you were missing Darrisaw for 3 games and Jordan Addison. Yeah, I mean, football teams, like, they miss guys. Like, that's going to happen. There will be players on the Chicago Bears that get hurt during training camp and, right? So every team always has to be able to deal with injuries and work around them as part of just being a football team. And the Vikings have enough to be able to do that. But those are 2 really valuable pieces. And yeah, it could be problematic to start the season if both of them are not ready or one is suspended and then Darrisaw is not ready. Do you think that there is a good chance, I'm just going to call it a chance, that Darrisaw is back for the beginning of the season with the fact that he was actually working in minicamp? But we don't know. It's got to progress and there are setbacks and things like that. But it was a really good sign to have him out there during minicamp. But you're right. I mean, if they got to start the season without those 2 players, that's hard. That could add a new layer of challenge for the Vikings because they need to win those games. When you look at how the schedule plays out, it's really important to go 4-2, 5-1 in those first 6 games because it gets really, really tough in the middle of the season. So that is a good point. Mike says, what are the chances the NFC North Championship comes down to the Week 17 matchup with Detroit this year? That's really funny you say that, Mike, because I've been working on my 50 bold predictions for the season. And last year, it got away from me, and I didn't get it done. In previous years, I've always done this, and then we go back and look at it, and, oh, I look like a genius, or, oh, I look like a complete fool. I think I had Seattle finishing last in the entire NFL, and they made the playoffs 2 years ago, things like that. And then sometimes it's like, wow, he actually picked the exact week that coach was getting fired. So it's a fun thing to do. And one of the predictions that I just wrote down, I was just working on this last night, was that the NFC North would be decided in Week 17 in that game against Detroit. That I wrote that down. So you took the words out of my mouth with that one. I do think that these 2 teams, Detroit and Minnesota, are very equal. They have some concerns and some, hey, what if kind of things, but they also have a ton of talent, and Detroit could take a bit of a step back. The Vikings could be a little bit better. Both are going to play really tough schedules. And would I be surprised if they walked into that game with both 10 or 11 wins and whoever wins it gets the NFC North Championship? Because I don't really think the Green Bay Packers are quite there on the same level of superstar talent as those 2 teams. And Chicago is going to have to prove it. Steven, contract year for Naylor. If he plays well in 2025, his agent could be seeking wide receiver 2 money next offseason, which the Vikings will be out on. I mean, even if he has a good season and he goes into that offseason looking for wide receiver 3 money, that's really good money. If you go look at the wide receiver 3 types that signed this offseason, Josh Palmer, Diami Brown, like guys like that, they were making $10 to $15 million. Like it's a lot to pay for a guy who's going to catch like 30 passes or something. But that's the type of money that wide receivers are getting because it's so valuable to have a good wide receiver 3 in any offense now because offenses are using it so much. But I don't think wide receiver 2 money's wild, dude. Wide receiver 2 money is like $27 million. And so I would put him, even if he has a good season, more in the range of like 15. but that's too rich for the Vikings' blood considering all the other guys that they've paid. Dusty says a large part of this could be the success of some of the recent picks as well to ease the cap hits of a possible Addison extension if he does keep it together off the field going forward. Right. Yes, I mean, that's true that they need to have other players like Dallas Turner hit. They need to have their future draft picks, guys that they just took this year, become, Donovan Jackson, become significant players for them. But with a player like Addison, you would move other guys first. If he ends up staying the right course, he will get paid over other people because the wide receiver position is so expensive and so it can be really hard to find. I know that they've had this great luck in the draft, but it's hard to find guys with this level of skill without drafting them in the first round. I guess they could do that to try to replace him in the future, but it's so vital to your quarterback that you don't want to let guys like that walk out the door. That's why Joe Burrow was campaigning for the Cincinnati Bengals to pay T. Higgins. You want those guys to stay. So you would rather move on from an expensive defensive tackle, an expensive corner, expensive safety, and make room for Jordan Addison if he feels like he can be trusted with that big contract going forward. Dwayne says, how great would it be to have Jets, Jordan, Naylor, Ty, Pop? Who is Pop this year for JJ? How great will it be? It's one of the best situations that anybody has ever walked into as a first-year starter. We don't know what Ty Felton's going to be just yet, or Rondale Moore is another example, or if TJ Hawkinson's going to gel with him the same way that Kirk Cousins did. But considering the offensive line and considering the wide receivers that they have, even if they have to miss a couple of games of Jordan Addison, you still have an incredible supporting cast that JJ McCarthy is going to walk into. Truly, like Brock Purdy or Jalen Hurts are the best examples I could come up with, because it's hard to find any of these teams that have put this amount of talent wide receiver wise and offensive line wise and coaching wise around their young quarterbacks just in recent years. Dwayne says, if Naylor beefed up as much as you're saying, do you see him giving some blocking relief to TJ and Smith? Or to Smith? Who are we talking about? Irv Smith? Who are we talking about? Smith. But do I see him giving some, do you mean Oliver? I think you mean Oliver. Do I see him giving some blocking relief? Not really, no. I mean, I think that he has done this to prepare himself to play 17 games in a contract year. And I definitely think he needs to block more and better than he did last year. But I don't think there's going to be a lot of the offense that's designed around Jalen Naylor blocking, or that he's going to take any of the relief off of TJ Hawkinson and any other tight end that they're playing. Those guys are going to, Josh Oliver is going to take on the vast majority of the blocking when it comes to anybody else but the offensive lineman. What they need, though, is they need to be able to throw a screen pass and have the wide receiver take care of a nickel corner in order for Ty Felton to break something or Jordan Addison to break something. They've just not really had that at all. Dusty, good point about Tutu Atwell. He was another one that made $10 million, and that's going up for sure. Hamza says, if Naylor has a big season and gets paid big money, the Vikings would get a third or fourth round for Naylor. We've gotten to the point of comp picks, which means that we need to bring in Maggie soon. Anytime the comp picks come up. Look, if he gets a big contract, then that will be good for them as far as the comp picks go. That's for sure. But what you're really hoping for is that just this season, he contributes a lot and helps you compete for a championship. And then whatever happens after that happens. If they find a way to keep him, then that's great. If they can't find a way to keep him, then they'll have to hope that Ty Felton or somebody else can come along and take up that role. So, I think that Jalen Naylor is a guy that you would circle and say he is poised to be a breakout type of player this year. But if we're just projecting, if we're just trying to project and figure out like what's he going to be this year? It's probably a very similar role to last year, only they want a little bit more yards after catch. They want a little more underneath. They can't just have him only being big bombs and stuff like that. Ham Darnold says, think about the dumb things you did at 23, then throw in fame and money. I don't look at it that way. Ham, I don't look at it that way with Jordan Addison. There is a lot of 23-year-old NFL players, and as far as I know, only one at this moment has a court date for DUI allegations, citations. So I don't look at it that way. There's no excuse. There's no talking your way out of that one, especially when Kyrie Jackson had just been killed in an accident that involved alcohol right before that. It's a problem. And I think that in some ways it felt like the Vikings kind of shrugged it off a little bit more than they should have last year. But I'm not going to shrug it off. It's very, very serious what he did. And just because maybe you did some things when you were a kid, that's not the same. You're representing a, $7 billion organization. I mean, come on, there's much more responsibility that goes along with it. But obviously no one should ever, I mean, you're kind of telling on yourself if you say that, aren't you? Like, I think 23 is old enough, and being in the NFL is old enough, and there's enough people around, and there's enough resources and all those things that consequences are consequences. You're not 9. Okay. You're in the NFL. You're old enough to be in the NFL. You can handle yourself behind the wheel of a vehicle like a grown-up with responsibility to yourself, your family, your teammates, and every other person on the road. No excuses for me on that. Sean says, Hockenson has exceptional speed for a tight end. Is it affected by the injury? Last year, yes. Normally, linebackers couldn't keep up with him. He and Travis had similar explosive speed. I think last year probably was. Long-term, I don't expect it to be any sort of issue. I really think of TJ Hockenson as far as his best skill is, it's not just speed. I think his speed is fine, if not really good. And explosiveness and quickness, yes. I think he's really good route runner. And I also think he's very, very, very football smart, like very elite football smart. He understands defenses. He understands space. He understands gaps in defenses, where he should fit in, all those things. And he can understand where the quarterback's progression is going to take him, where he needs to be, and then even adjust on the fly to his quarterbacks. He talked about Cousins being really particular about things where Darnold was less so. And I think he's a very good communicator and can adapt to JJ McCarthy. But to me, those are the two things. It's kind of the technical elements for TJ Hockenson that have made him very good. Tucker Kraft is not better than Sam Laporta, Alex, please. I know you love the Packers, but come on, we can't do that. Let's see. Son of a Beavers, do you think the Vikings take another look at Jordan Ta'amu as a quarterback for the DC Defenders? Ta'amu was incredible in the championship game, did win a championship in the UFL with the DC Defenders. I mean, I like him. He's a beast as far as his arm goes. Big, giant guy. I think he belongs in the NFL as a backup. He's had a good number of shots, but when you see him play pro ball, there's a lot of quarterbacks who have been in those UFL type leagues. Tommy Maddox is the most notable, who have found their way back. Josh McCown even was in the original UFL and worked his way back into the NFL. So I wouldn't mind seeing Jordan Ta'amu back here as part of the quarterback competition. He was only here for a few days, but I thought that he had a very live type of arm. How many open roster spots do they have? I don't know if they have any. Do they have any right now? Are they at 90? I didn't count them up the last time that I was out there. I didn't count it one by one. Are they at 90? I didn't think they had any roster spots right now. Okay. All right. So we have covered a lot of ground here on the show. So let's, why don't we bring in Maggie Robinson. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we were having a little bit of popping audio. So let me know, guys, if everything sounds okay. And then I'll just know that was my headphones. So let's bring in Maggie for Mondays with Maggie Robinson, former NFL producer and now headed back, in fact, very soon to college to get her MBA at Syracuse. Very impressive. Maggie, how are we doing tonight? What's going on?
I'm good. I'm good. I will have to say you're hyping me up a little too much. I'm not actually getting my MBA. That would be awesome if I was doing business. I'm getting my master's in broadcast
Oh,
journalism. Business would be awesome. Unfortunately, I don't do numbers like that, but I do talking, which is why I'm here and why we're going to kick this off. I wanted to lighten the mood a little bit. I know we had some heavy topics at the beginning, but first things first, I wanted to say happy belated Father's Day to all the dads listening and the guys in the chat. I know football is introduced to a lot of people through their fathers specifically. I know my dad introduced me to, unfortunately, the Titans. And I remember watching games with him on my couch, and then to work at the NFL at the age of 23 was just an incredible experience. And I wouldn't have even had that on my mind had it not been for my dad. So just a big shout out to all the dads out there. If you're listening, you are more impactful than you know. And also a celebration. It's JJ Justin Jefferson, not JJ McCarthy. It's his birthday today, and he is 26. And the NFL actually posted a few of his stats that I thought were incredibly impressive. And I wanted to read you off a few just to show you how much he's done before he turned the age of 26. He is the only player in NFL history with 7,000 plus yards in his first 5 seasons. He has the most receiving yards ever by a player before turning 26 and had the most 100 plus yard receiving games before the age of 26. That is 34 games. To that, I ask you, Matt, I'm going to put you on the spot. How did you celebrate your 26th birthday?
Oh, no idea. Absolutely no idea. I have no recollection of that whatsoever. Sorry, I misspoke with the NBA. Yeah, I've been watching The Office lately, so I was thinking of Ryan Howard being the business school guy. But oh wait, you haven't really watched The Office, so the references go over your head. When I was 26, I would have been probably getting my first job, which was as a producer at an AM radio station in Buffalo, WGR 550. And I remember, I mean, now I'm thinking about it, because when you know this, first break into the industry, what often happens? You have to work all the weekends, all the holidays, all those sorts of things. So I would not have been in a position to take my birthday off of work. And one of my early assignments as a producer was to run the board for NASCAR events.
Wow.
And let me tell you, on the radio, NASCAR events are pretty exciting. Like those guys are juiced up. They're like, this guy's passing, this guy's going in for whatever. But I mean, I completely lost track of where the breaks were supposed to be and what I was supposed to do behind the board. I'm pretty sure I fell asleep at the board, and it was not. I mean, those NASCAR things go for like 4.5 hours sometimes. You get a bunch of pit stops, you get accidents, and all I was doing is just sliding a little button up, turn it up, sliding it down, pushing another button to have a break, and that was it. That was the whole thing. So I am almost certain that age 26 was spent running some sort of NASCAR event. That's not the worst thing that I ever had to do as a producer, though. Maybe you can share if you had any of these grunt work things that you did for the NFL. But
Yeah.
the worst one was there. Okay, there's two.
Okay.
One was a dunk contest on radio.
Oh, no.
Now, just like let's think about that. It's a dunk contest, but two guys are broadcasting it on radio, so it's like it's a windmill dunk. Like he got 10 out of 10. You're like, okay. I mean, I guess I'm inventing this in my brain. That was the year that Blake Griffin jumped over the car, though. So at least they got to talk about Blake Griffin jumping over the car. The other one was the Hawaii Bowl, which went on really late at night. I think it started like 11 o'clock at night, and we had that on the radio. So it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's a 45-3 game in the Hawaii Bowl. And they're just passing still, and the incompleting passes. I talk about NASCAR going on forever. College football goes on forever. And at about 2 o'clock in the morning, I went to the overnight guy and I said, look, you just turn that off when it's supposed to turn off. I'm going to leave. I don't care if there's commercials left. I am not staying till 3 o'clock in the morning for the freaking Hawaii Bowl or however late it was. So I made my way out at that point. That's what I was doing at 26. I was doing the grinding.
I feel you. Production work is no joke. That actually reminds me, I have 2 examples that are now funny to think about, but crazy that I was even put in this scenario. It was last year, so I was 23. And for our job on the NFL broadcasting team, we help assist all the TV trucks and the major networks with like the same thing, placing their ad breaks. So obviously they have control of all of those buttons because they're in the literal TV trucks outside the stadium. But we are all watching the game on the All 22. We have these undelayed truck feeds. We're all tapped in via like wireless communications. And someone's on every single game, whether it's a primetime game or whether it's a Titans game shoved in at 1 p.m. that no one's really watching. And so your job there is to slot in the breaks in each quarter. I think a lot of people viewing it think it's it's pre-done. No, you're watching the game. You're like, oh, it's a punt here. We should go to break. I have to get 4 breaks in the first quarter. I got to get 4 breaks in the second. We have a floating break that needs to go somewhere in here. And the TV network really wants to shove in this promo, but we don't really think it fits here because it's going to disrupt the flow of the game. And so it's this whole learning of how not to break up the flow of the literal game, which is the whole point, but also to how to get our money, because that's also the whole point of the NFL is getting the bag. So that was just something I had to learn. And like same thing, it's a lot of just sitting there and zoning in. And I remember the craziest thing. I was sitting in my West Village apartment in this shoebox, and I was calling the commercial breaks for a New York Jets game. And I was like, who am I at 23 to be calling the commercial breaks for this live NFL game with millions of viewers? It was just such a surreal, like out of body, like, what the heck? Me? Are you sure? It was crazy.
Well, for the commercial breaks, when I first started in radio and we still had some of the stuff from like the 80s, I would have to search a code that was in a booklet that they gave for every single one to be able to put them in. So as the NASCAR race is going on, you're searching in the booklet, like, okay, what hour, what code, and you have to type in on a computer that did not work anymore, slide them in, hit them. Yeah, there's that's the stuff you end up appreciating later when you just get to sit here and talk about the football games, because I did learn a lot about resolving technical issues though. And as far as I know, it seems like we're good here. So that's but you know, those are the things that I don't know. They learn you in the industry, and then you appreciate it later. So good for you.
Totally.
So where did you want to take us tonight?
Yeah, so I know you on the daily are hitting all the Viking specific stuff. I kind of wanted to do this is Mondays with Maggie, but today it's mini camp with Maggie because I'm going to take you around the NFC North, and we are going to look at my top takeaways from the NFC North teams coming out of mini camp, what we can look forward to, who you should keep an eye out for. So let's kick this off with no one else other than the Chicago Bears and their new head coach, Ben Johnson. And for him and for everything I've read and seen, the devil is in the details. This man is so detail oriented, almost to a fault. And I say that with a former player background, and I will get into why. So I understand you want to correct all the small details. You're coming in, you got to establish yourself. You got to establish what you want, what the rules are. Let's lay the ground floor. You also have this quarterback who's going into his sophomore season, lots of media buzz. Ben Johnson does not seem to be about that. This man is here to play football and to keep his head down. So there's been a lot of rumblings kind of on social media and on the NFL ecosphere of him stopping practice all the time, making all these tweaks. He already told Caleb Williams to switch his throwing foot, like when he's getting ready under snap. There's 2 camps of coaches. There's the let them play guys, and then there's the type A guys. And Ben Johnson seems to be falling into the type A guys. And I will say, as a former athlete myself, I kind of hated the type A guys. And I know it's going to be good for this team, but you always know what you're doing wrong. I don't want to say that in a way of like, oh, I know better than the coach, but when you play the sport for long enough, and these guys are in the NFL at the highest level, you know what you're doing wrong, and usually you know how to fix it. And if not, these guys are vocal. They'll speak up. They can get coaching off to the side after the play is done. He's been stopping them all the time, making the offense reset. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts. Who do you prefer as a head coach? The chill, laid back, let them play, or the, hey, we're going to get this right every single time guy?
So I do think that the head coaching job is very, very different than the offensive coordinator job. That if the offensive coordinator is a real stickler, that might go a little bit differently from the guy who's supposed to be the leader of the entire franchise. And I certainly think that if you're stopping drills every 2 seconds because one thing goes wrong, I mean, my goodness, that's a very difficult thing to do because then you're not getting a lot done. what comes to mind for me is whether this is going to be a personality fit for Caleb Williams, because I think you could make an argument that what Caleb Williams needs is a stickler for the details, because his entire career was, I'm just going to drop back, I'm just going to screw around, I'm just going to throw the ball wherever. And he was able to get rid of that, or he was not able to get rid of that as a rookie. He was able to get away with it in college, where, even in college, though, you would see sometimes their offense where the receivers were looking like, what am I even doing out here? Why am I even running the routes I'm supposed to be running? And last year, Keenan Allen looked like he was going to walk off the field. And I think actually DJ Moore did at one point just walk off the field in the middle of a play. And everybody was getting frustrated with him. So he needs to know what those exact footwork drills are supposed to be and every detail of every play. But I also think if you try to put Caleb Williams in a box, that's taking away one of the major parts of Caleb Williams. But just overall, like, I think Ben Johnson's really going to find out. Kevin O'Connell certainly did. A lot of coaches have to in the first year, that being the head coach, you have to delegate to other people. You can't just spend all of your time on Caleb Williams's feet. You have an entire franchise to run. And if you do that, you're going to struggle, I think. So we'll see, because his personality to me doesn't scream like head coach. It doesn't scream O'Connell or Tomlin or those guys who are really like, the CEOs of a franchise. Like it normally doesn't come across the way it has with him. So I'll be interested to see if that works, because he is kind of the more X's and O's wizard guy than he is the master and commander of the ship kind of guy.
Yeah, I get that. I think Caleb Williams is a person who needs to be able to like have his creativity, but within guardrails. I think you can't let him, like you're saying, do his thing, because it's just not going to work and has not worked on the NFL stage. But I also agree to your point with Ben Johnson. His presence isn't there yet. And maybe that's something that, again, like a player, you develop as you step into this role and you own that space more. But it's not speaking, his presence isn't there in the way, like you're saying, like a Mike Tomlin, like that man, he is here. He means business. You know what we're doing. I just think it's his first year. So he's a rookie in that respect. I guess maybe there's always argument, cut him a little bit of slack if we look at the players that way, look at the coach that way, but we're the media. So our job is to critique. What are you going to do?
I mean, I think it's one of the most interesting things in the entire NFL this year, though, is Ben Johnson really the guy to take Chicago where they haven't been in such a long time? And can he actually get to Caleb Williams? Because I was looking into, and your predecessor, Clay Petrie, did an article about this, about historically, can young quarterbacks reduce the amount that they get sacked? And you can see for sure in offenses and how offenses will try to reduce the number of sacks. But a lot of times the answer is not really. It's that they can reduce it by some, but not really. So you have to be able to make up for it in another way. If you're going to get sacked a lot, then you have to have scrambling, playmaking, all those things running, which Caleb Williams can do. Is he going to let him do that? Is he going to get angry if he does that? Like, how much outside of the box is Ben Johnson willing to deal with Caleb Williams? I think all these guys, it's really tough. Even like a Mahomes or Allen, 80% of the time they're just running the play, but that 20% is what makes them truly unbelievable. Well, Caleb Williams was wanting that to be more like 60, he does something crazy, and 40, he stays within the play. It's very possible that Ben Johnson brings him back to the right ratio, and he's got freakish talent to be a great quarterback. So, I mean, that's one of those things where it's like, can't wait to find out how this ends up going. But some of the vibes kind of are a little bit like the Belichick guys.
Yeah.
Just so stiff.
Yeah.
Did not relate to their players. And this is where KOC is an alien, because he's got all the X's and O's, but he was in those locker rooms. He was a quarterback. He was an NFL player. Like, he knows how players want to be treated, and he's found the perfect balance between that. I'm not so sure on Ben Johnson.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the chat. I think it says Steven Sager said, remember, Caleb wanted to play for O'Connell, who's not exactly, quote, type A. Correct. You are saying everything that we are saying here. We will see how this season plays out. And a few other things to look for on the Chicago Bears. There's 3 rookie names that I think are notable, 2 of which are due to injury, which is unfortunate. Two rookies, tight end Colston Loveland and Luther Burden III, are both out on injured reserve essentially right now during OTAs and minicamp. But these are two different scenarios. So Colston Loveland is coming back from not a soft tissue. That's Luther Burden. Colston Loveland is coming back from shoulder surgery with the expectation that he'll be ready to go come training camp. Ben Johnson has been very complimentary of him and how he's handled this offseason, how he's come in, read all the things he needs to do, studied up, met the people he's needed to, set a good precedent. And then when you hear him talk about Luther Burden, it's really negative. And this is the soft tissue injury that I'm talking about. And it sounds like he's missing a lot of practice. This is a really not a great look for him. He's like missing the opportunity to make a lot of connections, to build a reputation, to get to know the guys, to build connection. And it just feels like we're talking about two different instances, even though they're both rookies, both out due to injury. Just the way that they're being spoken about by the head coach of all people is wildly different.
And this is something that all coaches deal with, and they all handle differently. Some coaches will just say, I'm never talking about injuries because you're going to use my words against me if I tell you a guy's coming back a certain amount of time or whatever. And so where O'Connell has gotten to is just saying, I like his outlook. It seems like I'm hearing good things and we'll see what happens, but very kind of vague, doesn't want to get boxed into a corner, but also doesn't want to push the player or disrespect the player to say like, yo, you got to get back on the field. Mike Zimmer was the exact opposite way, where he would just call guys soft as hell and in front of us and to anybody who would listen. And that actually bit him in the behind when he called out a player who had a botched surgery and it ended his career. And everybody, and he called them soft, and everybody in the locker room was like, are you serious? Like, what are you doing? Like, you're a psycho. This is insane. And he kind of lost the locker room in different times for calling guys out on stuff like that, when a lot of guys by the end of the year are playing through injuries. And if you're Luther Burden, though, it may be a little bit of like the message that you need. So this is where, like, I'm not saying Ben Johnson's doing it wrong, but you got to be out on the field, man. I mean, for minicamp, like minicamp, this is not the fastest, most high pace.
No.
Like, you're going to permanently injure your body by running some 7-on-7 routes. That's not what you want from a rookie coming in, is immediately being like, oh, I can't practice, because guys have to fight through things in the NFL if they want to be on the field. I agree with him. It's not a great sign. And I think if you pick the right guy, that's a rookie, screw him. Like, what has he done? He can get that message. But also, Ben Johnson's got to remember, he's not Dan Campbell. This guy does not come along with the same credibility as Dan Campbell. Everybody knew from Dan Campbell's career that he was a freaking beast. When Dan Campbell played, he was one of the toughest dudes out there every single time he walked out on that field. And if he called somebody out, all right, well, you've done it. You've been through this. Ben Johnson doesn't have that. So I think that he's walking a little bit of a tightrope already. I wouldn't say it's as bad of signs as like Urban Meyer not knowing who the players were, or, Joe Judge. I can't remember what it was that Joe Judge did, but there were very early signs, or Matt Patricia, where you're going to, no, this ain't gonna work. But there's a little bit of that. Like, okay, you're going to be hard, but you got to pick your spots in the NFL today. I don't think you could be like Mike Zimmer, who just rails on dudes, and that's just, they got to take it. I don't think that flies all that well today.
Yeah, it's definitely a fine line. And speaking of Dan Campbell, here's something I think he did that is, in my opinion, and I stand behind this 10 toes down, I think it's soft that he canceled their mini camp due to the Hall of Fame game. I'm sorry. Your game is July 31st. It is June 16th. For what reason, after all the turnover and change that you had in your coaching staff and the retirement of Frank Ragnow and the confusingness of your team in the offseason, what makes you think you can skip this? Having that attitude going into this NFL season makes me really question if they are still the team to beat like they were last year. It makes me question if he's almost gotten a little overinflated ego of being like, oh, we're going to be great because we've been great before. We're going to be great because NFL schedule makers thought we would be great. They might as well be playing the Chargers at a shared practice. They would get more out of that than playing them at the Hall of Fame game. Internally, the Hall of Fame game is kind of a joke. Everyone knows that. Preseason, kind of a joke. So the Hall of Fame game is like the laughing stock of the preseason. So that puts it at the top of the pyramid for me. I just don't understand this decision.
Yeah, the explanation is not all that great because in the Hall of Fame game, nobody plays. Like you're
No.
playing entirely guys that are going to go on to have wonderful careers in other vocations that are not football.
Yeah.
And we all know that. Like even just anybody who's watching the Hall of Fame is like, oh, look, people dressed up as Detroit Lions that are not going to be Detroit Lions. And Dan Campbell knows that as well. It sounds almost like just I wanted to do this and I'm saying this is why, but that can't really be why. There are, though, a few things that I would say about this. I've seen a lot of veteran teams over the years cancel the last day of minicamp because they've accomplished everything that they set out to accomplish. So they got to a point where they were like, all right, we've got it all installed. Everybody's got it. We're good to go. We don't need to waste our time with another day. Everybody's really happy to go on summer vacation. It's if you were in grade school and you're getting ready to go from third to fourth grade and they told you didn't have to show up for the last day of school, you would be elated. The football players are the same way. They want that day off. They want to start their family trips a day early. That's probably part of it. The other thing is too, Dan Campbell has to know that his team suffered a ton of injuries last year. And I don't think it's a total coincidence that he really beats them up in practice. He really practices hard during training camp, a lot harder than I think the Vikings have some years.
Mm.
Vikings have had great health for the most part. The Lions have not had great health for the most part. And if he realizes like you don't want to get guys banged up in mini camp or banged up in the beginning of training camp, wait till there's the regular season happening. That could be a small part of it. But the mini camp, I know it's sort of like I would come back here and talk about it and everybody wants like, how does JJ McCarthy look? It's like, well, it's mini camp. So, pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's only so much that can actually be done in an hour and a half in mini camp.
I agree with you, but I also just think the act of knocking the rust off when you're an athlete at that high level is so important. Just getting out there, obviously you're very limited contact, you're no pads, you're just running through things. That's so important and honestly it kind of helps with that muscle memory of, oh yeah, this is how I do it. So then when I come back for training camp, I'm ready to go. He's almost going to have to give a day or two of training camp and understand that he's got to lower his expectations because the guys aren't ready. And then guess what? You're going to have to do that again in the regular season because your starters for sure didn't play in the Hall of Fame game, nor did they do mini camp. So they have such a small window with which to get ready. I just worry that he's doing them a disservice. And I feel like whenever I watch NFL teams, there's always a rusty start at the beginning. The first 3 games, it's like, oh my God, what are we watching? I think it was the Eagles last year, their first game. I was watching it and I was like, they don't look good. Then they won the Super Bowl. But it takes even the best teams a game or two to get their rhythm underneath them. But not to have a mini camp just feels like a mistake. So we will see.
So I like where you're at as far as how much you're attacking Dan Campbell. Like that is what I like. I don't think for this team that it would be problematic if you had a rookie quarterback or it was a young team with a bunch of draft picks. I would say probably yeah. But just for example, last year Stephon Gilmore joined the Vikings after training camp, started week 1, played almost every snap, and played like 900 snaps in the season. I think a lot of the veteran players don't need as much as even they have right now with training camp. But I also like the take. Like, I think it's a take.
Thank you. Would I say it to Dan Campbell's face? No, but will I say it on this podcast? Absolutely. And with that, we're going to move on to the Green Bay Packers to round out the NFC North. So there are big expectations for their wide receiver room, namely Matthew Golden and some guy who I'd never heard of until I started looking into this, Cornelius Johnson. Matthew Golden is their rookie wide receiver they got from Texas, 23rd overall. And this is the first time since 2002 that the Packers have selected a wide receiver in the first round of the draft. So that is monumental in itself. Shows that they really thought they needed more depth at that position. He also had the fastest receiver time at the combine with a 4.29, which is only slightly slower than I run a 40. That's okay. That's neither here nor there. But I'm seeing a lot of different names, and they also have a great wide receiver one in Jaden Reed. He led the team in receptions and receiving yards in 2024. They just signed McCole Hardman to a 1-year deal. I feel like they're almost overstacking their wide receiver room. Like, what are they worried about here? I'm confused a little bit, but also excited to see where they go with this.
Yeah, I think that what the Packers did was we'll see if it was overcompensating or just compensating. For last year, well, they lost Christian Watson to an injury, and he's likely not going to play this year. But last year, around this time, the Packers were all telling everybody, their coaches, their GM, their players, hey, it's great that we don't have a true number one wide receiver. We've got many wide receivers, right? It's great because no one will know where the football's going. And of course, that didn't really turn out that way. It turned out more to be like they couldn't really truly rely on anyone. And Jaden Reed is as close as they have to a wide receiver one. I think they made the right decision in drafting a wide receiver and then another one, I think in the third round this year well, and to try to just throw numbers at it and see who emerges and hope. I'm sure they're hoping that their first rounder will be the guy on that team. But when you look at that group, does it scare you? I mean, do you think like, oh man, unless Matthew Golden is incredible, which I'm not really counting on, but you never know. Like with the speed, he could emerge as a great deep threat for Jordan Love. But I am not looking at that saying, boy, when the Vikings play them, they should be terrified. I mean, that's like how you look at Philadelphia with AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. Then you're saying, all right, that's, Saquon Barkley, really concerning. I think the Packers are mid pack.
Hey.
in just about everything.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they have a bad defense. I don't think they have a good defense. I don't think they have a bad offensive line. I don't think they have a great offensive line. I don't think they have a bad quarterback. I don't think they have a great quarterback. And maybe the only thing that they have that's exceptional is running back, but even that's a little bit debatable of whether Josh Jacobs is truly a game changer. He's not a Derrick Henry. He's not a Saquon Barkley. Is he even better than Aaron Jones was for them? Everything feels like a 9-8 kind of team, and it's kind of on Matthew Golden to be the guy that changes that for Jordan Love, because Christian Watson never became what they expected him to be. And Jaden Reed, I don't know if he's the complete enough package to be like a Justin Jefferson type of role for that team. So you're right. I mean, that competition there to see if anybody emerges throughout the season could mean the difference between, are you scared of Jordan Love or not? Because they just haven't had that guy for him since he got there.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And one other person that the media is telling us all to keep an eye out for, and someone who ended their mini camp early, as you were talking about, Brandon McManus. He is a 13-year NFLer, and he's actually been incredibly consistent during his time with an 86.7% PFF grade on field goals. But you probably, unfortunately, remember him from the boofed 38-yard field goal he had during the wildcard game last year. That's really unfortunate, but he made a 58-yarder on the last day of minicamp this year to let the players go early, and they did not have to do their conditioning, which as a former player, that is the best thing ever. If the coach gives someone a goal and then they make it and you don't have to run wind sprints, oh my God, day is made. So I think hopefully he's more consistent this year. I mean, hopefully not for the Vikings, but good for the team. Maybe not for the fitness of the team. We shall see.
I think they'll survive. But that reminds me of a story that there's a former Viking named Mike Morris who did a lot of radio and stuff around here, who's their long snapper. And he played for Cleveland at the beginning of his career under a young Bill Belichick. And he was telling a story about how Bill Belichick at the end of a practice in a very similar type of situation. So instead of, if he makes a field goal, we don't have to do conditioning, it was having the punter kick it as high as he could in the air. And if an offensive lineman caught it, then the practice was over. So, you got a big fat offensive lineman running around trying to,
oh my gosh.
We always joke around with some of the players about how hard it is to catch punts. Like, hey, do you think any reporters could catch a punt? And they're like, no, are you kidding me? Not if the guy's actually trying. So I can't imagine what that must have looked like with punting the ball up in the air and having an offensive lineman try to catch it. But that to me is a much better version than just a really good kicker kicking a field goal.
Yeah, that'd be awesome to see. We got to ask someone to do that because I want that. I got to see that with my own two eyes. To wrap up, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask if you didn't have any more headlines. I was going to ask you if you were today, based on your deep minicamp research on the NFC North, how would you order the NFC North and how many wins for each team
Ooh,
would you
okay.
have in the NFC North?
Okay. I would put the Packers at the bottom. As we were saying, they just feel incredibly meh and average and not like a sparky, have it all together team. They feel very much fine. I'm not wowed. I'm not disappointed, but okay, there they are. I would say, I honestly, and not to steal your thunder with the way you said it, but you said 8 and 9. I agree with that. I think that feels pretty consistently there. I would then have to say the Detroit Lions are in third. If I have this take, I gotta stand with it, and I do. I don't think they have it all together this year in the way that they did last year. I know this might be spicy, given that they came off what was it 14? What was their 15 win season? Incredible, not knocking that whatsoever. However, you had so much turnover, we can't discount that. And I know you have a lot of vets coming back, and I know there's a lot of leadership in the locker room, and Dan Campbell is not one to mess around, and he's going to run a tight ship. I just think if you reach the top of the mountain, it's hard to stay consistent up there. A lot of teams hit that peak, and then what do? You go straight down into a valley. And I think the valley is third place in the NFC North. So I just don't see it happening for them this year. Would it be a great story? Sure. But they already had that moment, and I just don't think it's going to continue.
All because of that one minicamp practice where they're going to go back like that. That was the moment.
I'm just drawing a lot of conclusions from here, and maybe this is completely unfounded, but it just feels like it sets the tone, and it's something as an organization, you don't mess around with things like that. It feels like you don't need it. Like, why? I don't know. I'm a little confused by all of this, if you couldn't tell.
Well, to your point though about Detroit, like regression does come for everybody. And one of the things that can happen to a team, it happened to Philadelphia, it happened to Atlanta when Kyle Shanahan left and they brought in Steve Sarkisian to be their offensive coordinator, is, it's just not the same. Sometimes it's just not the same. And last year it felt like every single fourth down hit for them. Jared Goff had a 5 interception game and they won the game. Like, that does not happen twice. That's lightning striking the same spot twice. If they were able to do things like that, like every single thing fell into place for that Detroit team last year. The only thing that could stave off regression for them, I think, is that they've even kind of beefed up their defense a little bit. They drafted some players on that side of the ball, Tyleek Williams, to try to stuff the run a little bit better. And if they stay healthy with Aiden Hutchinson, like, they could have a very nasty defense. I also was never convinced Aaron Glenn was the best strategist on defense. Thought he was kind of predictable at times. And so they have a new defensive coordinator, but I think they're just harder to project than they have been the last few years. And you mentioned Ragnow. That's just no small thing. That guy was superstar, head of the snake type of player. So it is, as I just pointed out in the comments section, it's a little bit of a hot take, but I accept that. I'll take that. So you've got the Packers at the bottom. Then the Lions. This would be a pretty shocking result.
Then the Lions. Then the Bears. Because again, I think we've all seen Caleb Williams can be very good. We act like he's this terrible quarterback who's running around and has no idea what he's doing. He can be very good. It just depends. This is all theoretical based off how things play out, obviously. But if Ben Johnson's coaching ends up working for him and he actually does really well under this style and he can get it together, they're a good team. We were saying this last year and there were really high hopes. Now he's in his sophomore season. You kind of shake off all the weirdness of being a rookie and all the hype he had around him. The expectations for him were astronomical. Absolutely no one can live up to that. I don't care how good of a rookie season you have. This man was hyped up on the cover of every single magazine, was on it was too much. And I think that had to be distracting. So I think maybe he's more settled. Maybe he has a better read of the team. Hopefully his teammates have gelled in the locker room and have forgotten his previous comments about not wanting to be on the team. So we'll see. And then I'm a Vikings fan now. You guys had to ask. Previously, was I an Eagles fan? Yes. But now for this podcast, I'm a Vikings fan. The Vikings are first. Come on now. They have so much potential, and it's so exciting. It's like you're sitting back watching a little kid grow up, and you're like, "I can see it in you. I know you're gonna be great." That's what it feels like watching them and just hoping that they live up to what everyone sees in all of these glimpses that we're seeing at minicamp, seeing in JJ McCarthy, the progressions that he's made, the way he's speaking, the attitude he has, the presence he holds, seeing Justin Jefferson step more into his own in this leadership role and ball out as always. What, by the age of 26? He's still in his prime. You have a great team, and I think more importantly, you have a great front office. And so when those two things come together, it's really hard to stop that train.
So just circling back to the Bears as
Mhm.
second place,
Mhm.
it's something that I could definitely see, but I think that each one of your selections would come along with a confidence rating. So my confidence rating in the Lions being third would be pretty low. Like I could definitely see it, but I would only say I'm 20% confident that actually happens.
Okay.
They have so much talent. And the same, I would put the same on Chicago. Now, I remember as a kid, I used to get Sports Illustrated, and every year they would do their big preview, and their experts would project what the standings were. And I would hang on to that magazine so I could look at the end of the year and look at the standings. And every year it'd be like nowhere close to what they projected because it's the NFL. And this is why we watch because you can't predict it, right? And so I think that you're going a different direction than most people would go with the division, which is probably Vikings one or Vikings two with the Lions number one still,
Okay.
and then the Packers and then the Bears would be the order that I think most people would expect. But you're laying out a scenario which I think is very realistic if something goes wrong for the Lions and they don't click with the new coaches, if the Packers just being mid is not good enough because you don't play the NFC or the AFC South this year and you don't get those free wins that got them into the playoffs. And if it does connect for Chicago with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, they've got enough talent there on the offensive line, the wide receivers to have a good offense. And if you're there in Chicago, the thing you're holding on to, even as your history, is so bad with quarterbacks, it's that they were in a bunch of games. And if Matt Eberflus calls a timeout and if Tyreek Stevenson doesn't mock the crowd before playing defense, I mean, then you're talking about like a 7-win team. There's a couple other games that are right there for them that they botched. It's not like they were a million miles away from being a competitive team. So you could see it. I'm not confident in it because Bears, but you could see it. I think the one you're most confident in is the Vikings at 1-2, which is weird to say because they have a quarterback who's never played before. And yet we've
Right.
seen them have so much success here, even in seasons that they went in projected to win 6 or 7 games, that it's almost hard to figure out how would they not be at least in the mix going down the stretch with Kevin O'Connell, with Brian Flores, with Justin Jefferson that you mentioned. Like all of those things are so sticky from year to year that unless there's a McCarthy injury, you should be right there in that conversation.
Right. And I think something I'm also thinking of as I'm doing these is it's the NFL, it's live sports. No one actually has any idea. We can project all we want. And I love playing this game. And I loved watching when I was working the draft, everyone's draft takes and who they think is going to go. And I would have to look through all the top draft picks. Some of these guys would never get off the board. You'd never see them. So we're making these picks and I'm giving you my reasons. We can make educated guesses, but that's all they are. And so I just think these are my educated takes. Could they be really off? Potentially, but I'm going to stand with this. I'm going to do a Kyle Brandt and say, you come back to me. We're marking this as June 16th. Come back at the end of the season, check in, see where we're at.
I just like that you went a little different there. You went a little bit off the trail and you really did a takedown of the Detroit Lions here on this night. So yeah, well, we will see. I think they have enough to still win the division. And somebody asked earlier about the Vikings playing them in Week 17, Netflix game. So everybody get your friends login or whatever.
For real.
But that I really do think if we're talking about most likely scenario that is a battle for making the playoffs. But I do not mind the hot take, as you said, middle of June, bring them out, be bold. I'm going to be doing this later this week or next week with the 50 bold predictions, so we can be bold here on the show.
You might as well. You might as well. And to wrap up my mini camp recap, I thought we would go actually to the boardroom and look at the place I just left, which is the NFL league office, to talk about poaching. Brian Rolapp, the chief media and business officer of the NFL, is reportedly going to be the CEO of the PGA Tour. This is super notable because this man was tabbed, everyone thought, to be the next fill-in for RG. Like, that's what it just kind of felt like. That's what the vibe was. So the fact that he's going over to the PGA Tour and leaving the NFL completely is big news. And it means there's also huge shoes to fill. And it will be a shakeup to see who is taking this role. It could be my former SVP, Hans Schroeder. This is all from an SBJ article. I have no actual insight into this. I wish I did. It could be Rini Anderson, who's been the SVP of sponsorships, or it could be Dhruv Prasad, who leads a bunch of our media deals and our 32 equity partnerships. This is just something to keep an eye out for, because as much as we talk about the players on the field and all the teams, the league is still run as a business. At the end of the day, it is a business, and media rights is what makes the money. I think he brought in around 13 billion in the divisions underneath him. So whenever we'd go into our town halls, it'd be like, oh, which divisions are making the most? And then broadcasting would be like, thank you for all your media deals. We really appreciate all the money you're bringing into the league. So just interesting to see who will take in this high-powered role.
Well, and it is true. And well, first of all, you guys called him RG, huh? That's is that what he was called inside the NFL? They call him RG,
Commissioner.
No, I think that's actually funny. But that commissioner role, Pete Rozelle was the one who really put the NFL on the map and became what it is now. But Roger Goodell has taken it to a completely other level with broadcasting. In some ways, I think a lot of people are not super happy with that, with having to buy Netflix, Amazon, things like that. And there was a really good article today by June Lee, formerly of ESPN, about just how leagues sort of have taken advantage of fans and have forced them into buying, extra subscriptions and jacked up prices just because they kind of can. So I do think of the Roger Goodell era as a little bit of that, but also as the game taking massive, massive leaps forward in its popularity since he took over. And I think it was in a very awkward position when he originally got the job. And there were some, I think, bad moments for him with off the field stuff and the warden and all that stuff, suspending guys for weed. And it was a little bit crazy and rocky there at the beginning with him trying to establish himself. But it has been a very stable league. And I look at baseball and all the goofy changes that are made and weird things that Rob Manfred has done and has not done a thing, in my opinion, to make baseball more attractive. I've enjoyed baseball less and less and less since Rob Manfred has been in charge. It matters who becomes the next commissioner of the NFL. Everything from just like how things are operated to, the rule changes that they clearly push from behind the scenes that they want. I'm sure the Packers would tell you that about the tush push. Like, we didn't really want to get rid of the tush push. That was coming from up top, was the understanding. But that is a very powerful position. So I have to ask you then, if you were the commissioner of the National Football League, if RG, so to speak, said, you know what, Maggie, you are such a great producer behind the scenes. You're the commissioner now. What are you doing? Like, what are you doing?
Wow. What a crazy question. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, one, honored to be in the role. First woman ever. Let's go. We're making waves. Day one. Always knew I'd be up to something big. But I would have to say, thinking more specifically to the broadcasting, because that's exactly where my brain is going and what we just talked about, I think I would want to somehow keep the amount of money that, I don't know how we do this, but we'd keep the amount of money that we're making, but consolidate it so that the viewer is not having to buy 1 million subscriptions and other things, and that we're not at risk of pirating, and just make it easier to watch. The whole ethos of the NFL is that football is for everyone. It's like family football, whatever you want to say. You watch it because it's always on your TV. There's no paywall. You're there. You're bonding over it. It brings people together. It doesn't bring people together when it's behind an Amazon Prime paywall and you got to pay for it, or it's on Netflix on Christmas and I don't have a Netflix subscription and now I can't log in because I don't live in the same household as my friend who, just combining everything and still making somehow the most money and negotiating those media rights in the way that benefits us because I'm the commissioner of the NFL. And again, we want to make money, but somehow consolidating just for ease of viewership and streamlining that process. And I know a lot of stuff is going digital. I'm not anti-digital. I'm just, can we figure out how to narrow the digital games that are put out there?
I mean, what you're saying, attempting politically, because you used to work with those people, is it sucks for fans to have to do that, to have to buy Amazon, to have to buy Netflix, to have
It's
to,
expensive.
to
It's the everyman's game, and you're pricing people out of watching this game.
right. And I think that there's a legitimate argument that it should not be legal to be able to do that because the NFL and all other sports leagues, they have exceptions from the government to allow them to run the way they run, antitrust, things like that. This was in the June Lee article. And uh, I think taking football away from people and putting it only behind a paywall is borderline should not be allowed or legal to be able to do. Plus, you mentioned, I mean, just the fact that like how much games cost to go to. And at some point you think if franchises are selling for $6 or $7 billion, like at what point have we reached such cartoonish and comedic money that this is not really necessary to do? But that is the goal of the commissioner. So you're already a terrible commissioner, even though I completely agree with you. And I think that it's a great take. What you are enacting is a good of the game. That's what
I'm a
you are
woman of the
enacting.
people, Matt. I don't know what to
Yes.
tell you.
Yes. And I think what you're doing is choosing the good of the game over every last dollar that you can squeeze out of every sports fan's pocket. And honestly, even this is sorry to get off on the rant, but I think you picked the right thing. Would be like, this is insane. Like, okay, so maybe if you have, like you said, if you have one package of people buy that are out of market, they'll buy the package so they could see their local team. If you have one, okay, that's fine. That applies to all of these games. But if you're talking about you can't do it unless you get 5 or 6 different subscriptions, and you're talking about playoff games that people can't watch, to me, that is so far beyond greed that it's absurd. And I am a season ticket holder for the Minnesota Lynx, and I look around at some of the prices and I'm like, this is a lot more than it used to be. And I think that all sports have priced out so many fans, and the NFL has gotten there as well. So they've priced you out at the stadium, and then they've priced you out at your house as well to be able to watch these Thursday night games. We're never going back, that's for sure. But I do think that it's wrong. The steps that they've taken to basically push the envelope to say, who's really going to stop us? And the answer is nobody, because the same people that run the government, I don't want this to be conspiracy. The same people that donate the most money to politicians also are the same people that own National Football League teams. So I don't think it will ever be stopped. But I appreciate your effort as commissioner to make life better and more football for more people. Well done.
You know, I'm all about equality here. Looking around the league, talking about everyone equally, let's go through a few hot takes. And I want you to tell me if you are yay or nay on these hot takes that I pulled. I was originally going to title this slay or nay, and then I didn't think that would go over well with you or your audience. But if you want to say slay as in an unequivocal, yes, I agree, awesome, be my guest.
Too old. Too old.
I thought I'd just give you the option.
Nope,
All
just
right.
too old. But yay or nay, I get.
Yay or nay? Cincinnati Bengals. The headline is the Bengals are in the wrong in the Shamar Stewart negotiations. So for those of you who have your head in the sand and have not heard about this, Shamar Stewart is a rookie edge rusher out of Texas A&M. He was picked 17th overall by the Cincinnati Bengals, and he is still unsigned as of this afternoon. He left the Bengals training camp over these issues with his rookie contract, and it all kind of boils down to the language in his rookie contract that has to do with guaranteed money and what happens if he defaults on a contract. It's a lot of legalese, but I think at the core of it, he's just asking to be treated the same way that other first round rookies are treated and get the same language. And they are not doing that. They're deciding to choose something new for him and essentially have him be the guinea pig. And I will say one more thing. The Bengals, just kind of in the media, it's kind of a known thing, have their reputation of being a business before players organization. They ranked 24th in the NFLPA report card last year. this is just proving the point that it feels like the people in the front office and the people on the field are not speaking the same language. And I'm pro Shamar Stewart in this issue. It sounds in some ways like just sign it. You're being greedy. You haven't even played a snap in the NFL. What are you to be arguing? But also, it's a lot of money that we're talking about, and he has a right to want to protect that and protect himself getting into this league.
This was talked about as a potential problem with JJ McCarthy that got itself worked out, but it took a while for McCarthy last year to get his contract signed because there was a similar language for guarantees that I don't fully understand that there was some debate over. And we have reached the point, as you mentioned, that enough first rounders have gotten this language in their contract that it's almost standard practice, and the Bengals need to just grow up. Like at this point, when it comes to stuff like this, and I know the Bengals, I think it's their family business is the Bengals. It's not like they own Walmart like the Denver does. And then, oh yeah, we got this little side football team or whatever. But when it comes to the Bengals, they've always been, call them shrewd. You said business before people or something. And it's like, yeah, there's a bunch of different ways to say really cheap. And that's what the Bengals are, because I guess they're spending their own money that they bring in. At this point, they should have made enough dollars to not worry so much about that. But things change. And when we've reached this point, you are hurting your team by nitpicking the heck out of something that is not that big of a deal overall in the grand scheme of how many dollars you're actually spending for players and contracts and everything else. And once we've reached the point that everyone else is doing it, we just get this done and get the distraction taken care of. And I think the same thing with Trey Hendrickson. It's like this team is in a Super Bowl window every single year they have Joe Burrow, and yet they just shoot themselves in the foot with nonsense like this, where you could just get this taken care of and move forward. Maybe the Hendrickson thing is a little more complicated, but it's an elite pass rusher. Like you need that. That's worth paying for. You would lop off 8 other players to have a guy that can get you 15 sacks. So I don't really understand the people that run the Cincinnati Bengals. And it feels like 25 franchises or so have moved forward in their lives as franchises into the modern era of the NFL. Cause this feels very like 1990s, early 2000s, where franchises weren't making all this money and would kind of nitpick and fight players and they'd hold out and all this stuff. We don't even have that anymore. Holdouts are rare in the NFL because the money's there and the cap is so flexible as long as you want it to be because you spend the cash. They're being silly gooses, and it's time to just get on track with the rest of the NFL or just sell the team, like move on.
Yeah. One other weird thing about this whole issue is that if he isn't signed, he can actually re-enter the draft next year.
I did not know that. That's crazy. I did not know
that was a real thing, but also I can't imagine that would work to his benefit. I think he would almost be just written off as, no, you just didn't play for an entire year. Who's to say you're still good? There's videos of him still working out. The guy's still getting after it, but a very bizarre thing to be happening. And I hope for his sake that this gets resolved within the week, because this is just crazy. You don't want this hanging over the team as you're going into training camp in July.
Is there any way, son of a beavers, is there any way to trade him if he's not signed? I don't think so. I don't think you could. Maybe. I don't think so. But maybe.
Think so.
I actually don't know for sure. You're the commissioner.
Let me get back to you on that.
You make the rules on that.
I'm driving the boat. Okay. Atlanta. Let's look at this one. The headline, Kirk Cousins will be a backup in 2025. I don't think this one is all that groundbreaking, but I'm just going to explain why. They tried to trade him around. He tried to look around. No one was biting. No one wanted him. He's coming off an Achilles. He's coming off a shoulder injury. He's costing them a boatload of money over there to be sitting on the bench. And I don't see this happening. The only way I see him starting is if someone gets injured. And I know you've had that take before. I just don't really see that happening. I think he's a solid option for Atlanta to have as backup, except for the fact that he is just draining their money away.
I mean, the reality of Kirk Cousins is that last year he played like a backup, and he put it out there after the season like, oh, I actually was dealing with an elbow issue or whatever, but we all saw, I mean, he couldn't move, and he is an older player. That Achilles is not getting better, faster, stronger. No. Like, it's not going to be different than it's ever been before. he is a very good backup who could still win some games, and he did last year for Atlanta. Some of them had to be in very strange fashion. Like, it's kind of funny that he beat the Philadelphia Eagles on a crazy last second comeback and everything, and then they missed the playoffs. The Eagles win the Super Bowl, but I think that he's in the position he's got to be in. If you were Pittsburgh, you're better off taking a bet with Rodgers probably than Kirk. If you're Cleveland, you might as well get started on your future with Dylan Gabriel or maybe Kenny Pickett, I guess. Probably not, but Shadur Sanders, of course. You're better just trying to find out if one of those quarterbacks in that competition can work out rather than bringing in Kirk to win you 7 or 8 games. And I think that's all he's going to. I mean, even at his absolute best, he was usually capable of only winning 8 to 10 games. What's he going to be at this point? But if you're Atlanta, he knows the offense. If Michael Penix gets hurt, which quarterbacks do, Penix has a history of injuries. You never know in the NFL. It's so crazy because when they drafted Penix, a lot of people criticized the Falcons. What are you doing? You just signed Kirk to this contract. And then within like 9 weeks, it looked like a genius draft pick. It might end up, who knows, even if he wins, even if he gets hurt, Penix, and he wins 2 out of 4 games, Kirk does off the bench, and it helps them get to the playoffs or something. It might be better for them. Having the best backup quarterback in the league might end up ultimately being better for Atlanta than trading him for nothing, taking the whole contract. You might as well just live with that mess that you created.
Yeah, I will say, talking about the shock at him being drafted 8th overall, in the building when it was draft time, when that name popped up, the shock that you heard behind the stage of the entire thousands of people in the audience being like, ah, no way. No one saw it coming. It caught everybody off guard. The people in our headsets were like, okay, that's a weird pick. Well, like, okay. They know what they're doing, I guess. So I guess we're about to see if they know what they're doing. But yeah, I just don't know. And it's just so much money. I just feel like they could have done that one a little better, so as their cap space wouldn't have taken such a hit.
This is where you have to learn about Kirk Cousins' agent. Kirk Cousins' agent, and I mean it, is the best agent in the entire universe. Mike McCartney is the best agent I've ever seen in my entire life. He raked everybody over the coals for the Minnesota Vikings every single time they negotiated an extension. It was the worst possible scenario for the Vikings every single time. He won every single negotiation. And then I was not surprised at all that he got $100 million guaranteed from the Falcons, because I was like, Mike McCartney, I've always said that if I ever got another job in media where I had to negotiate a contract, I'm calling up Mike and being like, just do me this one favor. I'll give you 25% because I know you're going to kill it. This guy's a beast. And for the Falcons, I always got the sense that it was Arthur Blank who wanted that done. And Kirk knew it, and his agent knew it. And so they just said, this is the going price for starting quarterbacks in the NFL. If you really want it, make it happen. Because I think the Vikings, under a very narrow situation, if it had been a certain type of contract, would have brought him back and had him be the bridge to McCarthy. But instead, he just is unbelievable. Yes, Steven says his agent is in the contract wing part of the Hall of Fame. This guy is unbelievable. To get $100 million guaranteed coming off an Achilles injury is so insane. But I'm not shocked. He was coming off his first contract with the Vikings. He was coming off a 7-9 season with Washington and got the biggest contract guaranteed money ever in history. Genius. He's just a genius.
You know what also helped him is that quarterback documentary. I don't undersell that.
Oh, it did.
He was a man of the people in that. Everyone loved him. Family Guy, Kirko. Those two things work together. You got everyone behind you saying, oh, he's a great guy. He's a culture ad. That's a locker room guy. And then this guy who's a dog who's arguing for him at the table. Oh my God.
And then it just so happened that he played his best 2 games of the season, 2 of the best games he had ever played right before he got injured. It was a culmination for Kirk Cousins. And I never, ever blamed him for taking those contracts. I know some people wanted him to be like Tom Brady. Why doesn't he take less? Like, look, I mean, if somebody's going to offer it to you, then I can't ever blame them for blaming the person for taking it, because I think we would all probably do the same thing. But anyway, that situation, I think is playing out kind of the way, not exactly the way I thought it would, but almost with Michael Penix the minute they drafted him. I thought they must know something about that Achilles.
Yep.
Was because on draft night, I was seeing the reaction. I was live streaming, and people will remember me laughing hysterically for like 3 straight minutes after the draft pick because Kirk had given us a whole speech in the locker room. Like he did, the only time he ever did an end of the year locker room conversation with the media was that year.
No.
And he had it all prepared. And he was like, I want to find a team that, you know, really loves me and that kind of thing. And he dropped this incredible line, which I've used many times on the show. He said, it's not about the dollars, it's what the dollars represent. And I was like, that is absolute fire, my friend. And I've used it every day since in some form. It's not about whatever, it's about what it represents. And what it represented was Atlanta falling in love with him. But I think when they got him there, they saw how far away he was physically and thought we better draft this other guy. And the other thing too is that I think it's quite clear draft analysts have no idea what they're doing with quarterbacks. They just don't. They don't know them, for one. That's the biggest thing is Mel Kiper does not know Shedeur Sanders. He did not sit in a room with him. He did not put him through whatever they put him through in those meetings. So all they know is arm strength, size, statistics, stuff like that. If you know a defensive tackle's sack numbers, you're going to get pretty darn close with size and what they do in the combine. With a quarterback, it's so much more complicated. And I think what people missed is that Michael Penix, his character is incredible. Like his brain for the game, his heart, all that sort of stuff that teams fell in love with. And I think if JJ McCarthy had been that pick for the Falcons, the Vikings would have happily drafted Michael Penix in that spot. So it is a situation to follow because they have really gotten themselves in trouble and they're not really able to use the rookie quarterback contract the same way that a team like the Vikings is. And then they go completely off the rails in the draft and trade a first round pick for next year to move up and get James Pierce. That was wild to me also, when the history of late first round pass rushers is not always ideal. So that's a weird team, man. That is a weird team. I don't know where the hell this started, but that is a weird team.
It's definitely one to watch. That's kind of all I had for you, but I did want to say I will be off next Monday. I'm actually moving up to Syracuse, so you guys cross your fingers for me. I will be driving from Tennessee to upstate New York. That is 1,000+ miles in a little Honda Fit. But shameless plug here. I'm starting a TikTok account to document my time at Syracuse and to document me learning how to do on-air sports broadcasting and to get my first job out of grad school in front of the camera, not behind. If you want to follow that, it is the same handle as my Instagram, which is at Maggie Robinson with 2 N's. Give it a follow. Come follow along. See what's up. I think it's going to be a really fun year, and we're kicking it off here with Matthew.
Don't follow any other random Maggie Robinsons like some of us have done on multiple platforms. No, that's great. I wish you the best. I made a similar trip from Buffalo, New York to Minnesota. I was driving a U-Haul with a Chevy Cruze attached to the back of it.
Oh, no.
And my wife was driving her car with a Greyhound in it that we had just adopted. And then we had for only a couple months. And then the Greyhound is packed up and traveled with us all the way across the country. So that was a very interesting journey. So I wish you the best of luck in doing that. And hey, look, if you want to get an MBA too, then, you know, maybe do that while you're there. But no, very exciting for you to start this journey at Syracuse. But after next week, you'll be back and you'll be doing every Monday night, continuing to do that. And hopefully for training camp, we can get you out for a practice or preseason game as well and do a little live podcast that way. So thanks, Maggie, so much. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And thanks everybody for watching / listening. And we'll talk to you all very soon. So football. Yeah, football. We'll see you guys later. Oh, wait, Maggie, did you want to say football? Hold on.
I'm back. Football, baby.
Okay, there you go. Thanks, everybody. See you later.